Welcome to Dr. Mercola's Cellular Wisdom. Stay informed with quick, easy-to-listen summaries of our latest articles, perfect for when you're on the go. No reading required. Subscribe for free at mercola.com for the latest health insights.
Hello, and welcome to Dr. Mercola's Cellular Wisdom. I'm Ethan Foster, and alongside me is Alara Sky. Today we're diving into why balancing potassium and sodium matters far more for blood pressure than simply cutting salt. We'll unpack new 2025 research, revisit long-standing guidelines, and lay out practical steps you can take to recalibrate your mineral intake for healthier blood pressure control.
Thanks, Ethan. Most advice still pins high blood pressure on sodium alone, urging strict salt cuts. Yet almost half of U.S. adults remain hypertensive. The overlooked piece is potassium. When sodium skyrockets while potassium lags, the cardiovascular system struggles to maintain fluid balance and vessel tone. Correcting that ratio turns out to be a more robust lever than slashing salt in isolation.
Let's ground that in numbers. The average American consumes nearly twice as much sodium as potassium, though biologically we're wired to thrive on the opposite, about 5 times more potassium. Processed foods, which supply over 70% of daily sodium, flip the ratio, creating a perfect setup for stubborn hypertension, kidney strain, and hormone imbalances that drive vascular stiffness.
A March 2025 modeling study from the University of Waterloo put the sodium-potassium relationship under a microscope. Researchers simulated real-world intakes, sex differences, and multiple hypertension subtypes. Across every scenario, when potassium intake doubled, systolic pressure dropped, even when sodium stayed high. Men saw 7 to 14 millimeters of mercury declines, women 5 to 10 millimeters of mercury. Those are clinically meaningful shifts achieved without touching the salt shaker.
What powered those reductions? First, potassium limits sodium reabsorption in the kidney's proximal tubule, where 2/3 of filtered sodium normally re-enters the bloodstream. When less sodium is reclaimed, more exits through urine, a process called natriuresis. That simultaneous increase in urinary potassium, or kaliuresis, keeps overall mineral balance steady while relieving fluid overload that elevates pressure.
Beyond flushing sodium, potassium alters hormonal signaling. More sodium reaching the macula densa sensor tells the body to dial down renin and aldosterone, hormones that typically conserve salt and water. Lower renin-angiotensin-aldosterone activity lets vessels relax and volume fall. The study also uncovered a feed-forward gut-kidney signal. As soon as dietary potassium enters the intestine, the kidneys preemptively prepare to excrete sodium, preventing spikes in serum potassium and curbing blood pressure early.
Researchers disabled that adaptive renal pathway in follow-up simulations. Blood pressure stayed elevated, and potassium accumulated dangerously. The takeaway is clear. Potassium's benefits rely on intact kidney responsiveness. Where kidneys remain functional, boosting potassium reliably counters high sodium environments, making the overall ratio a stronger predictor of cardiovascular outcomes than either mineral alone.
The findings echo a broader rethink of sodium restriction itself. European heart failure guidelines withdrew blanket salt limits in 2024 after data showed little clinical benefit from universal restriction. Instead, they recommend individualizing advice, especially since overly tight sodium ceilings can trigger hormonal backlash, spiking renin, aldosterone, and cortisol, each of which worsens vascular resistance and metabolic stress.
A JAMA internal medicine review, pooling 9 heart failure trials, likewise found no consistent improvements in symptoms, hospitalizations, or survival when sodium dropped below conventional targets. Notably, a large Lancet trial that capped sodium near 1,500 milligrams a day, saw no advantage over standard counseling, and all-cause deaths trended higher in the low-salt arm. We can't ignore evidence that extreme restriction may backfire.
Meanwhile, going below 5 grams of salt per day, about 2,000 milligrams of sodium, failed to confer extra protection in a progress in cardiovascular diseases analysis. Given that competitive athletes, heavy sweaters, and caffeine drinkers lose more sodium, uniform minimal limits look increasingly outdated. Instead, attention is pivoting toward optimizing sodium-potassium balance rather than pushing sodium ever lower.
Let's translate that into everyday numbers. A physiologically supportive sodium intake for most adults is roughly 3,500 milligrams daily, provided it comes from natural sources and potassium remains high. Serum sodium on a fasting chemistry panel should hover around 139 millimoles per liter. Levels below 136 may indicate you're over-restricting salt, while values above 142 signal excess refined sodium or insufficient potassium.
Potassium targets merit equal clarity. The American Heart Association sets 3,400 milligrams for men and 2,600 milligrams for women as baselines. For active blood pressure management, 3,500 to 5,000 milligrams works better. Hitting that range is feasible through food. 1 cup of cooked spinach supplies about 840 milligrams. A medium baked potato, 925 milligrams. A cup of coconut water, 600 milligrams. Aim for several servings across meals rather than a single megadose.
Processed salt matters too. Standard table salt is 97.5% sodium chloride, stripped of companion minerals. Pink Himalayan salt contains over 2,000 milligrams of potassium per kilogram and naturally occurring trace elements. Swapping refined salt for an unprocessed variety modestly improves the ratio, but it's not a substitute for produce. The real leverage lies in reducing boxed meals while elevating whole food staples.
Let's spotlight those staples. Leafy greens like beet greens, Swiss chard and broccoli, orange-hued options such as cantaloupe, winter squash, and carrots, fermented dairy like grass-fed yogurt and kefir, plus tomatoes, oranges, and coconut water. Building plates around these foods crowds out high-sodium, low-potassium snacks and gradually restores a favorable electrolyte spread.
Remember, balancing minerals affects more than blood pressure. An imbalanced sodium to potassium ratio raises risks for kidney stones, osteoporosis, cognitive decline, gastric ulcers, and even erectile dysfunction. By shifting diet quality rather than obsessing over milligram math, you address multiple chronic disease pathways simultaneously.
Practical recap. First, audit sodium sources. Scan labels for anything exceeding 200 milligrams per serving and keep processed choices occasional. Second, include at least 2 potassium-rich foods at each meal. Third, use natural salt to season home-cooked dishes to taste, confident that adequate potassium blunts sodium's impact. Finally, verify progress with periodic blood work and blood pressure checks instead of guessing.
That brings us to closing thoughts. Hypertension isn't solved by declaring war on salt. It's managed by respecting the synergistic dance between sodium and potassium, elevating potassium through whole foods, allowing moderate natural salt, and minimizing refined additives realigns body chemistry with its evolutionary design, yielding blood pressure improvements on par with many first-line medications.
Thanks for joining us on Dr. Mercola's Cellular Wisdom. Apply today's insights by adding a leafy green side at lunch, choosing coconut water over soda, or trading processed snacks for fresh fruit. Small shifts compound quickly when they correct a fundamental mineral imbalance. Until next time, stay informed and empowered on your journey toward optimal health.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe now and click the notification bell so you never miss an update. See you in the next video.